ESO listeners, and welcome to another episode. We've got a great one for you because this is the way. And we are going to be talking about The Mandalorian, as if you couldn't tell. It's going to be a fun one tonight. And season 3 has come and gone. Can't believe how fast it went, actually. And it's going to be a ton of fun to be able to share it with you guys. And we've got a great show for you. Got a great crew to talk all about it. Let's, of course, welcome Mr. Mike Gordon. How are you, dude?
Howdy.
Ready for this one?
Oh, yeah. I've been ready for this one for a little while now. There's so much to talk about.
Oh, there is. It's going to be a ton of fun. And returning to the show is Jay Sherer. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. And I have been podcasting weekly, or doing shows, I should say, weekly, about The Mandalorian season 3. So I am prepped, I guess.
So he's all talked out. He's done.
He doesn't really want to.
He's going to quietly listen in the corner.
Yeah.
And if we make any problems or anything, he'll be giving us that evil eye, going no. But he won't. But he's such a nice guy. He won't correct us, so it's okay.
No corrections here.
No, exactly. And of course, Ashley Pauls, the original Star Wars fangirl herself. It's cool.
Oh, thank you. I heard that you guys were going to talk about Star Wars tonight, so I couldn't resist. I just have to come and talk about it too.
Oh, it's great to have everybody here. And folks, if you haven't watched season 3 yet, we are going to spoil the hell out of it. So folks, pause, take a break. We definitely want you here tonight. So please watch, and because we've got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to shut up right now and let Mr. Mike take over. Let's hop in, Mr. Mike.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Okay, well, there's so much to cover. 8 episodes, but man, every episode was packed with a lot. So I'm going to try to get through what we can. But before we go into like deep waters and through the weeds of it, let's get your overall impressions of the most recent season. Ashley, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I feel that overall I'm still working through my feelings and thoughts about this third season. When The Mandalorian was first introduced, I thought it was a fun show. I liked some of the Western undertones and exploring this side of the Star Wars universe, and I fell absolutely in love with season 2. I thought it was just top-notch Star Wars storytelling. Love how they wove in Boba Fett and some of that character moments. I mean, Luke Skywalker's appearance could have been just like that's a cameo, just of course they're doing, but I felt like they worked all those elements in together. I feel that overall season 3 has been a little more unfocused, or at least that was the experience of watching these episodes week to week. There were some really great moments and then some moments that just kind of had me scratching my head. And it was hard coming from the Book of Boba Fett and the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which I also felt had good moments, but were flaws. So in the end, I don't think I loved this as much as I was hoping to, but there's a lot of threads and elements that were introduced in this series that I think are going to pay off later in Star Wars live action storytelling. So even though this wasn't the most amazing Star Wars thing I've seen overall, I think there's still plenty of good elements that came from it. And maybe I'll feel differently once The Mandalorian as a show has finished, and then we're looking at the storytelling arc as a whole. So yeah, really excited to talk more about this.
Interesting. Jay, what about you?
So I would say, to provide context, before this season, The Mandalorian and Andor were my top 2 favorite Star Wars properties, which is crazy because I'm an OT guy, right? Like I love the original trilogy. Empire Strikes Back is for sure up there. Rogue One, actually, I love Rogue One as well. All of those things work fantastic. After this season, I feel a little bit more like Ashley, where I'm not sure where The Mandalorian goes from here, because it was my number 1 until Andor came out. And then Andor came out and I went, wow, like it's a little less Star Wars and a little bit more Better Call Saul. But I loved it. It was just amazing. The writing was amazing. The performances were amazing. Everything about it was phenomenal. And then we get season 3 of The Mandalorian, and I feel like season 3 of The Mandalorian for me is about the same as Kenobi, because both of those series, at the end of it, I went, huh, not really what I wanted, not how I would have pulled it off. And ultimately, it's still Star Wars, so I like it, but I'm not like in love with it. And it's because Mandalorian season 1 for me was the best, and we'll probably get into some of the reasons why that's true and why season 3 isn't true. But yeah, so it's Star Wars. I'm happy to get Star Wars, but it's not my favorite.
Sure, absolutely. Mike, what about you?
It's interesting because, coming into season 3, if you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, you would have been lost completely. And I had a friend of mine who didn't, and it was real interesting having to catch that person up and let them know, these are the episodes you have to watch, because Book of Boba Fett almost became, it felt like in some ways, season 3 of Mandalorian. And this was like 3A or 3B for a season. And it was interesting with that. I agree with both Jay and Ashley that it felt scattered. It felt like it was building foundations, and it was having you guess what was going on. Were there moments in this season that I went, oh my God, this is just awesome? Heck yes. Oh, very much so. But there was other episodes and scenes where it's like, I don't know what they're doing there, but it looks pretty cool, and, just trying to figure out, who are these characters? Why are they focusing on them? And, I'm sure we're going to get more of that in Ahsoka. I'm sure we're going to get more of it in some of the other series we're going to get. And, we don't even know when Mandalorian is coming back. They haven't even announced when season 4 is going to be on the plate. So, well, exactly. There was rumor, truthfully, that Pedro was done, that he didn't want to do it anymore.
I doubt he was ever on set this season.
No, I don't think so either. He's a voiceover actor for this, literally. But I heard, there was also a scene that they cut that, Gideon takes off his helmet, when he's captured in the last episode. So, who knows? This is the way, blah, blah, blah. We'll figure it out. And it's going to be fun talking with you guys about it, because there's so much to talk about.
Enjoyed this season a lot, maybe more than any of you guys. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are puzzled, and I'm not saying they do this the right way at all, but if anybody has followed Dave Filoni and what he does with Star Wars, he is very much interested in filling in gaps. And whereas The Mandalorian started as like as Ashley said, like episodic, lone wolf and cub, Western samurai kind of show, it was quickly apparent to me, especially in the second season, that wasn't all it was going to be. Like, we were going to get, this was going to be a series that slowly but surely bridged the gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, which meant opening up the show a lot. And also, Dave Filoni likes to make these series that sort of connect with one another. Like, if you watch Clone Wars, it connects with Rebels. Bad Batch is in the middle, and they all fill gaps. And if you watch those series, you will be rewarded, because there are lots of things. Bo-Katan, for example, started in Clone Wars. She made her first appearance in Clone Wars, and she's all through Rebels and as well. So, and she's one of my favorite characters in the canon now. And I've been following her story from that time. The fact that she gets to really shine here in this season, I was really happy to see that, and I thought they did that really well.
Kudos going out to Katie for that. She was amazing as Bo-Katan.
But also, Yeah, she's one of the few voice actors that gets to reprise her role in live action. Not too many of them get to do that. We did see one other one this season, which was a nice surprise too from Rebels. But I think also, I don't think that the powers that be made it clear that the Filoni Favreau shows were going to connect, so that you had to watch all of them for them to make sense. I mean, it's apparent to me, obviously, as you guys pointed out, that Boba Fett connects to Mandalorian. Mandalorian connects to Boba Fett. Mandalorian season 3 is going to lead into Ahsoka. Ahsoka is going to lead into whatever comes after that. Whatever comes after that, we just got word that Filoni's going to be doing a big event movie, which assumed that's going to be his like end game, if you will, right? for this sort of time period. And I'm all about that. I'm excited. Now, that does mean, as Mike pointed out, there's going to be a lot of things where he's going to open up some doors, and they're not going to be walked through very deeply until we go on further. So there was a lot of that this season where the world just opened up a lot. Whereas Mandalorian, instead of being a show about Lone Wolf and Cub, Din Djarin and Grogu, it was an ensemble show. And I think a lot of people were taken surprised by that. And right or wrong, like I said, I think the directors and the producers could have done a better job at kind of explaining this is how this is going to work. But there's really nothing else like it. So it's hard to do that. When you're breaking new ground, it's hard to say like, okay, this is what we're doing. Hang on. Right. So, but I agree with you guys that obviously there was 2 episodes in particular of Boba Fett that you had to watch. So were essential to the Mandalorian and going in to watch the Mandalorian and understanding what was happening. And that was really maybe a disservice, but I mean, since I watched them, I watch all this stuff, so I benefit from that.
It's interesting though, if you don't mind me cutting in right
No,
here.
absolutely.
Star Wars was in this thinking that they were counting on people watching every single Star Wars show, watching, and knowing the knowledge of all the different, cartoons, and knowing, because someone who hasn't watched Rebels would have had no idea who Zeb was, or or who Bo-Katan was, or ideas like that. And it was just interesting because to them, Bo-Katan showed up last season in Mandalorian, and she was leading a party of other Mandalorians, another faction. So it was just really interesting. It's kind of the same thing Marvel's going through with their TV shows and their movies. They're counting on everyone watching all the different materials.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And that's,
and whereas
I don't know if that's going to hurt it or not,
where there are some things you can, not watch, or there are things that, like, for example, Andor, which is a great series as well. Very different. It's telling a story from a different time period, although it's interesting the parallels that I found in season 3 and what's going on with the rise of the New Order, with what's happening on Andor. So that's very interesting as well. But you don't have to watch either one of those to understand. Like, you don't have to watch Andor to understand anything that's going on with the Mandalorian, and vice versa.
Well, Andor takes place before New Hope, though, too.
Sure.
So, and literally, from what I'm hearing from people who I know, that Andor season 2 is literally going to end right at the beginning of Rogue One, and so it'll be very interesting to see, what happens with that. So
the thing with prequels and the thing with Filoni filling this stuff in is that we know how things are going to end up. So,
sure.
We don't know exactly what's going to happen to certain characters, but we know how things are going to go. So that's a disservice in some ways, but I think Filoni pulls it to his advantage. So let me point it back to you, Ashley. As far as this sort of open world, do you feel like it's being successfully presented? Or do you feel like, that you wish that The Mandalorian was just its own separate show?
I'm really torn in terms of this, and I think there's been some growing pains as Star Wars expands into the small screen with these tie-in movies and things like that. As a fan, I love watching all the stuff. I enjoy seeing things interconnect. Like, I freaked out last season when I saw Ahsoka in live action. Like, I'm so hyped about seeing Thrawn in live action and Ahsoka, so I love seeing some of these tie-ins. But I also feel that maybe widening the focus of The Mandalorian lost just a little bit of what made that show special. I think some people really enjoyed it for its smaller scale storytelling. It was just something that you could watch and enjoy The Mandalorian without needing to be steeped in Star Wars lore. So I think there's a place for both types of storytelling. I'm looking forward to seeing all the connections in Ahsoka being like full on connected to the Dave Filoni verse, as it were. But I think maybe they tried to tie too many threads with The Mandalorian and maybe lost some of the heart of that show, which really is the bond between Mando and Grogu. And I thought some of the shine out moments of this season were just seeing that bond between them. Like, I'll be fully honest, there were some tears in my eyes when Mando decided to formally adopt Grogu, just because of its close ties to my own personal story of having adopted my daughter, and the idea of Star Wars being so much about found family, these people who are not related by blood but come together to form a family unit. So I thought that was really powerful. So would thought some of that maybe got just a little bit lost this season, and if they return to doing the Mandalorian story, would like to see some of the focus on that again.
Yeah. And to your point, I do remember in season 2, at the end of season 2, whereas it was very spectacular, very, headline making, the fact that Luke Skywalker returned. There were a lot of people that were like, hey, I don't want no Skywalkers in this story. Like, this story is supposed to be Skywalker free. Like, this is supposed to be something that takes place on the Outer Rim. I don't want that main story. That's for the movies to tell. I'd rather have something that's just completely separate and an independent story. And yes, I do feel like those probably are a lot of the same people that are really not happy with the way things went this season. But I don't know. I'm not saying the season was perfect. Jay, what about you? What do you think about like that way of storytelling?
So I am one of those people that like the original concept of the show, but I think that there's actually a business reason behind doing what they're doing, right? And we saw this happen with the prequels. So the prequels were I just did a recent poll on my Twitter account and said, like, do you prefer the sequel trilogy or the prequel trilogy? And it's
that was
shocking
a tough question to ask. That was a tough question for me to answer, by the way.
It was a tough one, right? It's a really tough one. And one of the things that I think that we tend to do is we tend to see things through the lens, storytelling, especially through the lens of nostalgia. And so the prequels have sort of grown on people over the past 20 odd years, whereas the sequel trilogy is newer and left a bad taste in our mouth with it for a lot of people. And I think that one of the things that Filoni did really well is that he took this trilogy of movies that didn't land super well with audiences at the time, meaning the prequel trilogy, and he filled in all the gaps that people were just kind of like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. He filled in all of those gaps that made people go, now this makes it all feel like it's all connected and makes it feel like it's Star Wars.
He improved the trilogy.
Yeah. And so I think what happened was, I think that Mandalorian season 1 was likely, this is me just, assuming, greenlit before the trilogy series, before the sequel trilogy had actually ended. And so what the sequel trilogy did is they did not have it planned out well. One of the big problems with Star Wars right now is that the vision of what Star Wars should be really, it's kind of messy, and it only lands with like Filoni. Filoni's the only one that you can kind of see he's got his hands all over everything and kind of understands what things could be. So it really does feel like that was supposed to be a Western episodic with sort of a loose through line kind of show, that then Disney said, you know what, we're not selling enough merch with the sequel trilogy. That limits the ability for us to make money. So we need something else to be our through line. Guess what? People love The Mandalorian. we sell Grogu like hotcakes. Let's put Grogu. Let's make Filoni take over his ability to solve for the problems of the prequel trilogy by having him solve the problems of the sequel trilogy. And it feels like they just basically said, we're going to keep calling it The Mandalorian because it gets the views, but we're going to kind of shift it into this new focus of it's going to be the Clone Wars for the sequel trilogy. And that's, to me, what it feels like. It's not really what I was asking for. I preferred season 1. It doesn't mean that I don't like this, but it does mean that this was one of the most oddly structured series that they've done yet, in my mind. It almost seemed like they were going to go in a different direction and had to do a bunch of rewrites at the last minute, is what it felt like to me. And so that's kind of where I start to go. It's not that I don't like those fill-in things. I prefer season 1's approach. I don't mind the fill-in things, but the fill-in things, I wish they knew what they were doing from the very beginning of that, because it's almost like they were trying to be like, well, we're going to still throw this episodic nature of the show in, and it's going to somehow connect to this bigger story, but it's not always going to connect to the bigger story. And it just felt a little bit like, an episode of the Clone Wars. And it's fine, but again, not my not my ideal.
And yeah, to your point, like, I kind of knew with I expected anyway with Filoni's involvement that it wasn't just going to be a standalone series, that it was going to affect things. Now, I'm sure it was ramped up business wise, but of course that makes sense. But the fact that Filoni wasn't devoted to this season as much as he was the previous 2 seasons, that he was really focused on Ahsoka, I think that also might be cause for why things were a little bit scattered. If you look at the episodes, he was like the second to last episode, amazing. That's a Filoni episode, right? The last episode, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So no offense to Jon Favreau or the other the other showrunner that they got, but the other producer guy, but which I can't think of his name right now. But I do think that, when Filoni's got his hands on it, it's a little bit better for everybody. Not to say that everything he does is gold, but so Mike, what do you think about all of that?
It's interesting because I've been listening to what everyone has to say, and I don't disagree. And I agree that, The Mandalorian was supposed to be a Western in space, basically, the lone gunman. And then it became more of a lone wolf and cub type situation when they brought in Grogu. It's interesting because as the series has evolved, it started getting more and more further into Star Wars lore, and it was the hinting of certain characters coming back and everything. The whole return of Boba Fett in season 2, you got that. You got, Ahsoka, you got, and it started tying further and further in. But remember, the name of the show is The Mandalorian. It doesn't have to be about one Mandalorian. It could be about the Mandalorians, about them, retaking the planet. And I was fine with what they were trying to do this season about, them recapturing their former glory, getting their planet back after the Empire had decimated it. And I liked how, it was interesting because, Djarin got his honor back. Since he had taken his helmet off and he was banished from, and, I liked the seeds they were planting slowly through the season with that. And I fully expected by the end of the season something to happen with them, either being the whole race being fully destroyed, being betrayed to Gideon, or them actually taking the planet back. And we got to see that. And my God, anyone who has ever said that they wanted to see a battle in the air of people on jetpacks and fighting, that was a total wow. that made the season for me. The last two episodes when they were retaking the planet, those last two episodes redeemed some of the stuff I didn't like about this season. And I thought, this is what I've been waiting for the whole time. The effects on it, the battles, everything, wait, those jetpacks, those aren't Mandalorians. And you see all these, stormtroopers wearing, where the jetpacks and coming in. And then the final one where they're all coming in from space. And, and I love the scenes where the Mandalorians were being the floor opened out and they were all dropping out of the spaceships and everything. Come on, total geek out. This is 10-year-old Mike, when he first saw Star Wars, if he knew he was going to be seeing this, he would have said, you're effing nuts, because Star Wars was enough for him. But this, folks, this made my season, for the show. These were scenes we got it when they retook the planet from the space pirates, but this was to the 9th degree. This was amazing, and this is what the Mandalorian is about, and that's what I loved. This was part of, we had Grogu and you had Dar Jin, and it was awesome. But I loved that we got all of the Mandalorians, all of them working together to retake the planet and everything. And that's what the Mandalorian was about to me.
I mean, that when season 2 ended, the way it ended with Din Djarin having the darksaber and Bo-Katan being right there, and Grogu going off with Luke, I thought, we're going to get a season without Grogu. We're going to get a season where the Mandalorians are trying to unify. I thought that's what was going to happen. And then Book of Boba Fett, I was like, well, okay, now Grogu's back and looks like we're going to go just back to being the same old Mandalorian show. But then in the first episode of this, he's like, I need to go back. I need to go to the living waters, bathe in the living waters so that I can redeem myself. And I'm like, okay, that's going to take all season. And then episode 2 happens and he like dunks himself. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that happened really fast. And then Din, our main character, doesn't have much to do. Like, I mean, he's there, but I don't know if it's his show after that, until sort of the end, because I mean, he says in the last episode, he says to Bo-Katan, I'm here to serve you. I'm paraphrasing there, but it's basically like, you're the lead now, which I have all sorts of questions about, all sorts of the way that sort of played out. But I do think that, and also to your point, Mike, where the battles, and we get to see Mandalorians fight in a way that we've never gotten to see that before. It's just outstanding. All those kids, when I was a kid and I had that Boba Fett figure, if you had told me I could have an army of them, I mean, that would have been so sweet. And it's been joked about, and I think I subscribe to this, that Filoni and Favreau are just two kids playing with their toys in a sandbox, right? They're just having a lot of fun, and you never know which figure they may pop in and bring into it or whatever. Whereas Andor is like the adult table. Like Filoni and Favreau are quite nicely set at the kids' table, and then Andor's at the adult table, which we've never had an adult table before for Star Wars, so that's pretty awesome in and of itself. So I got to point it back to you, Ashley. What did you think about the storyline of the Mandalorians and reclaiming Mandalore? Was that compelling enough for you? Was that done well enough for you in this?
Yeah, I think that was interesting, getting to explore their culture a little more. I was familiar with it from big fan of the Clone Wars animated series, so I followed it through that, and then some of the extended universe that's now no longer canon, but was interested to see how they would all come together. And I like that concept too, of this culture that has been scattered and now they're drawing back together to reclaim their home world. And I thought the special effects and the set design of Mandalore was really fascinating to see. The planet had been obliterated, and then all these caves underground, seeing the forge, and then seeing that forge be relit again. So I thought there was a lot of interesting symbolism with that. And I do like that they had Mando teaming up with Mandalorians as part of, again, that common Star Wars theme of found family coming together, kind of rediscovering that group that he's a part of, and getting to see Grogu become a Mandalorian and choose to do that. I thought was really interesting. Was kind of disappointing we didn't get to see the full mythosaur. I was waiting for that in the finale, and they teased us. They're still making us wait. Would have been nice to see, but I felt like it was a good story direction to go back. The idea of reclaiming Mandalore and seeing Din kind of get reconnected with the larger group of Mandalorians throughout the galaxy.
Yeah, the what you said about the mythosaur. I mean, I think there were a lot of things this season like that they sort of introduced or brought up that you thought, oh, this is going to play out this season, and it didn't, and it kind of leaves you empty, even though you should be aware of the way these guys are playing the long game. So just because we're not going to see the mythosaur now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be prevalent in the future. And but as far as this season goes, it's kind of like there's a story rule, a principle, if you will, called Chekhov's gun, which is like, if you introduce a gun in the first act, you better use it in the third act. And so there's a lot of things that were like introduced. And a podcast I listened to called The Ringerverse was really, they made a funny comment about this season of The Mandalorian. They said in the writer's room, they don't think Chekhov was invited to the table.
Very true.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of stuff that ultimately did not play out by the conclusion of this season. So, but it is interesting. I'm kind of curious to see, like, with the Mandalorians together, why do they need to be together? What's coming and what is the state of, we don't know what the state of the Mandalorians are in the new trilogy or the recent trilogy, whatever you want to call it. So this could be really interesting as it plays out. Jay, what about you? How did you feel about the Mandalorian side of things this season?
I think that Bo-Katan's story, as it relates to the covert and as it relates to the rest of the Mandalorian crews, the Night Owls, and all the rest of them, is by far the best part of the season. Like, I think that the parts of the season that are awkward are all related to the continuing story of Din Djarin versus Moff Gideon. That's where it all gets kind of like, for me, it starts to unravel a little bit, because it's like, we just picked up where we kind of left off. We did kind of just reset the table. And that's the only new part of this story that I find a little bit more compelling. So I think, obviously you guys said it at the top of the show, Katie Sackhoff in this role is phenomenal. She clearly dedicates herself to it. She clearly enjoys it. You can tell that she loves the hell out of doing this.
You can tell that she doesn't mind wearing the suit and the helmet.
Exactly.
Hey, at least she's on set,
She's on set.
I know, seriously. And I think, I would, just like you guys have already said too, seeing them fight with the jetpack, seeing the end battles, seeing the Praetorian Guard show up, I thought was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I thought they worked a lot better in episode 7 than they did in episode 8, but phenomenal stuff. I mean, seeing all that stuff play itself out was really cool. If you ask me, how would you go back and solve some of the issues you have? I think that they made a mistake in trying to hide Moff Gideon from us for so long. I don't know if that was a Giancarlo Esposito couldn't be available thing, but when you get to that end battle, let's call it episode 7, and you start to see the Dark Troopers 2.0, right? They have all their best car armor. They've got jetpacks now. I really wish we would have had in the beginning of the season, we would have seen Moff Gideon meeting with the Shadow Council, feeding them lines while he does other things. We see him get broken out of prison. We see him start to build his little army. We see the Dark Troopers completely obliterate. Well, maybe it's the space pirates or something, right? So that they seem, because by the time we get to that episode, they go, I've got new Dark Troopers and they're awesome. And it's like, they're kind of just stormtroopers with jetpacks at this point. Like, you're kind of, the Mandalorians are kind of just wiping them out. I feel like that was where the season, to me, kind of struggled. It was like everything before episode 7 seemed like this long preamble that, if it had included segments of Moff Gideon and what he was doing, would have solved a lot of the problems that the season presented for me personally.
Yeah. I've also heard that if the episode 3, I think, with everything going on in Coruscant, if that had been sprinkled out through the course of the season rather than in just one big episode, we probably would have been more invested in that as well. It wouldn't have seemed like we were taking a day off from The Mandalorian, right?
Exactly.
Although it's not, like I said, it's not unheard of, because I know in other Filoni shows, he does that all the time. Like Bad Batch, there's an episode where none of the Bad Batch appear. It's all from the bad guy's point of view. And like there's, it's done that way. So,
well, you would have cared more what happened to the scientist if it was spread out over multiple episodes.
Yeah. And we still don't really know. Like, I mean, we think he's dead. We don't know.
No, he's not dead. His mind was wiped pretty much because of the spy.
And
the spy. Interesting. A lot of people this season, because of the whole, like, all the things that were introduced that may factor into the finale or not, people began theorizing, much the way they do, like, with a lot of TV now, especially Marvel stuff. And when things aren't, either resolved or resolved in a way that they appreciate, there's a lot of backlash. And I don't think, unlike some of the stuff that, like, Marvel did, where they purposefully threw out, like, red herrings for people who were theorizing, I don't think that Star Wars did that. Like, this isn't WandaVision, right? Like, WandaVision, like, really, they were all behind the scenes going, hey, they think it's Mephisto, right? Whereas I don't think anybody here was like, I don't think they were like, they were like pointing to, oh, the armor is going to betray everybody, or Bo-Katan's going to turn heel, or like some of the Mandalorians are not going to get along with others and it's going to fall apart again, or Grogu's going to end up with the dark saber. There's like all these theories that were going into the finale, and of course none of them came to any realization, which a lot of people were like, what?
Which I was glad about. I was really glad they didn't.
I don't think that was intentional, but yeah. I mean, go ahead, Mike. You were glad that none of them came out.
Yeah, no, I'm glad none of it. I think it would have. I think because you and I were even talking about it, that we thought the armorer was going to turn heel, or
I was real worried.
Yeah, I was really worried about that. That when she went back up to the, back up to the ship.
Yeah, I was like, this is real shifty.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, underneath her mask, she was twisting her mustache or something. Yeah.
she was welcoming in those newbies too easily, a little bit too easily, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So it was, for me, it was, there were so many theories put out there, and there was so many, little red herrings that I think a lot of us put out there because we wanted to see that, but because we were wondering, where the heck is this going? And we've been for years, working with, like you said, Marvel, and, listening to what they've been trying to do. And I don't think it was necessary. I think a lot of it was real interesting how they portrayed it. I'm glad we didn't see Grogu end up with the blade and everything. And I think one of the best things that happened this season was the destruction of the blade, of the black saber. I don't think they needed it. It was too much of a crutch, that they were relying on in a lot of ways. And I think this way, it's now Bo-Katan is the leader who brought the Mandalorians back to Mandalore. And, and she did it without the black saber, type thing. And I like that because, she was like, when we first saw her, she was all depressed. Oh, they all left. All my Mandalorians left me because I didn't have the black saber anymore, and they wanted to go off and do their own thing. It's like, whatever. That was kind of whiny. I did like seeing more of Coruscant that we've actually had seen and everything, and you got to actually see the last mountain peak that was the natural, the highest peak on Coruscant. That was pretty darn awesome. But like you said, that could have been done over multiple episodes. And I think it would have made it more effective. And then the betrayal at the end of that episode over a couple, if it was spread out, would have been more effective. Like, instead of instead of that way. And she was playing almost like the double spy type thing, the double. And some of that didn't make any sense, but it was interesting. And then for them to name the episode, the seventh episode, Spies, and they only showed the one spy, it was like that didn't make sense.
That made it a bit worse, the speculation.
Exactly.
There's still not really definitive answers to why that episode was called The Spies, either on screen or off.
There's probably something that we didn't see, that we didn't see or something, or
there is one good one. There is one good one, I will say. Yeah, there's a good one out there that says that effectively the spies are a analogy of the 12 spies coming out of Israel to spy on, I'm going to forget who it is. I feel like it's I don't think it's Egypt, but it could be Egypt. And that the reference to the spies is the 12, because there were 12 spies, and that the 12 Mandalorians who volunteered to go on to Mandalore were the 12 spies. So those were the spies that they were actually referring to. I thought that was pretty good.
It's a good theory. If the Mandalorian titles had ever been more than just direct, like Mandalorian titles have never been like, oh, what does that mean? It's always been like in your face, like,
Dave's going deep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they
make them think on this one, folks.
Ooh, this one's got a deeper meaning.
Exactly.
But that helped lead everybody to think that somebody was going to turn.
Very much so.
I did like the way that they had they developed so many cases against Moff Gideon that at the end, by the way, I didn't know if he was going to be defeated, and I still don't know if he's defeated.
Right. Yeah. He was wearing a full suit.
He was wearing, he's got that Vader fetish. I don't know why, but certain Imperials just like have that Vader fetish. They want to be like Vader. They want to dress like Vader.
Now he could be all burnt up like Vader.
Yeah, exactly.
That's dedication to your hero.
Exactly.
There is conjecture that since the actor and the character in the finale didn't have a mustache like he has in the past, that he was actually a clone, because the clones don't have mustaches. We see that, so there is some sort of leeway there that we might not have seen the real Moff Gideon get destroyed, but it does set up that Din Djarin has a reason to kill him. Bo-Katan has a reason to kill him. Even though we haven't met him yet, Thrawn has a reason to kill him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so the fact is, if he's got clones of himself, everybody can kill him at some point.
Everyone gets a turn.
Everybody gets a chance. It would.
So
be
you're
a shame.
basically saying that Gideon is the Kenny of the Mandalorian show.
You know what? I like Giancarlo so much, and he is so good in the last 2 episodes of this, chewing scenery, just going all out with this character, that I'm going to miss him. If this is the last time we see him, I'm going to miss him, because everybody else on this show is solid, but I mean, he brings something to the table that's just special. I don't know. What do you think? Do you guys think this is the end of Moff Gideon?
I don't think so.
No.
Like, that suit of armor was just way too cool looking. And you think in terms of like selling merch and action figures, like, I think he's going to be back, whether it's him or a clone. He will appear again and have some role to play in the larger story.
They're going to change his name to Snoke. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, the whole cloning thing, a lot of, this Mandalorian touches upon 2 things that even Star Wars fans kind of go, I'm not comfortable with this. Cloning, and they didn't quite say midichlorians, but they almost did.
Yeah, they kind of did. Yeah. I almost had these were force sensitive.
Yeah.
It's like,
M count. I'm like, okay, that's about as close as we're gonna get, right?
Don't go there. Don't go there. No, don't say that name.
So, Ashley, what's something else about the series that either affected you one way or another, in a good way or a bad way this season?
Yeah, well, something that I did not enjoy as much, I think it was episode 6, was I thought the celebrity cameos were a little too obvious, which is a shame because I adore all three of those people. Like, they're so great. And like hearing Lizzo talk about like how Star Wars was important to her dad, but I felt like it was too in your face. Like, oh, here is Lizzo and Jack Black together on a planet. So I wish they would have worked that in a little more organically. Like maybe if Jack Black had been playing an alien, but you still heard that iconic voice, I would have liked to see that do a little more subtly. I did really like seeing the Shadow Council, and I just get giddy whenever I hear mention of Thrawn's name. So I'm really excited about that. And I feel like I'm also one of probably about 10 people that is a super fan of General Hux from the Star Wars trilogy. So I was really excited to see his father make an appearance. Like I said, there's
Played
probably
by the actor's brother.
Yeah, so like I said, there's probably about 10 people out there for whom that was a season highlight, but I was one of those 10 people and I was really excited. And just seeing the Praetorian Guards, love their design, and they're not Jedi, but having those weapons, seeing that kind of melee content, and this is not necessarily a criticism, but just for me personally, I really like the Jedi and Force storytelling side of Star Wars, and it feels like we haven't heard that in a while. So anytime we get something that's close to a lightsaber or close to that type of combat, I'm excited. And again, not bad that Star Wars wants to explore other things, but I have been kind of missing that in some of the storytelling. But yeah, so those were just some highlights and lowlights for me that came out of the season.
The Shadow Council scene not only introduces Daddy Hux, which is pretty fun, but also I think it's the first time we've seen a live action version of Paladin. And,
yeah, I was really excited about that too.
He's old school. Like if you're a Thrawn fan from Era to the Empire, like way back in the Timothy Zahn day, like that, like he's there right there with him. He's like, for those people who don't know, he's like the Commissioner Gordon to like Batman for as far as like, Thrawn. So I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Because I don't even remember seeing him in like Rebels.
Yeah, he was one of my standout characters from the old Legends, and I'm really glad to see that that's something that Filoni and Favreau are doing because, let's be honest, there was some not so great stuff in Legends, and that could be a whole podcast of its own, but I'm glad they are picking some of the good stuff to bring back in, and just his dynamic with Thrawn will be cool to see.
That's a really cool idea. I'm gonna have to mark that down because we've never done a show about like sort of extra alternate media Star Wars stuff.
Oh man, I could go for hours, good and bad, about the old expanded universe.
So maybe we need to explore that a little bit more in the future.
As long as you talk about giant green rabbits, who smoke cigars.
Yeah. I can't not mention Jackson. Jay, what about you? What's some of the highlight or low light for you? Another one.
I think for me, the highlight of the entire season was episode 7. I mean, episode 7 to me, it didn't feel like episode 1, but it did feel like it didn't feel like season 1, but it felt like season 2 in terms of the culmination of a lot of things that we had been wondering about all happening at once. Probably, honestly, too many things happening at once. They could have spread that out a little bit more and done more reveals. But Giancarlo Esposito continues to be one of the best actors on the planet. A lot of actors will say Star Wars dialogue is hard. Well, Giancarlo Esposito was born for it. He just nails it every time. And just the way that we saw everybody come together in that one, it was a small band, whether you want to call them spies or whether you want to call them just the small band of Mandalorians that were going into that space. How that all played itself out, I thought was really, really cool. that made me excited for, whatever's to come next was episode 7. I think the episode 6 was the episode of The Mandalorian that I went, that's the worst episode of The Mandalorian I've ever seen. But I do think that one thing to point out about that, because I don't want to be completely negative about the episode, I completely agree with Ashley in regards to the cameos. But one thing that was done extraordinarily well in that scene, there's been a lot of complaints about the use of the volume, because sometimes, because the actors are playing in a space that is not expansive, it can almost seem like the expansiveness beyond where the actors are is just fake and not really an expansiveness. But I thought that Bryce Dallas Howard handled the volume in a way that showcased how well somebody who's used it before can build off their prior skill set. And I thought she used it amazing. Like when they were going through certain parts of that city and they're having a chase scene through that city, it really felt like they were in a big city. It didn't really feel like they were in a volume running around, right? And so even that episode, I think, did some things technologically that showcased that more can be done with Star Wars in that kind of setting. So overarchingly, I thought the whole season was sort of fine, but episode 7 to me was phenomenal.
It's interesting too, because episode 6 is probably the closest thing this season that we get to an episode that would have been in season 1 or 2. Like it's an episode, like a completely like Mando adventure.
Side story.
Right? Yeah. And it's like, hey, this is cool. I want to see him go on just me. And then it's like, I don't want this one.
That's true.
But
be careful what you ask for, folks. When you get it, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Mike, what about you?
Well, the high points, of course, were later in the season. 7 and 8 were complete high points. But I did like some of the earlier episodes. I keep on going back to it. I loved, when, the Mandalorians, fought the pirates. I thought that was a great episode, because it felt like something out of the Old West. It felt like, it felt like, you were watching like a John Ford movie, or you were watching, something like the Magnificent Seven or something like that, coming against all these bullies who have taken over the town and everything. And I liked that. I thought that was really, really well done. Episode 6 with the cameos and everything, like you guys have been saying, you guys wished for it. This is what you guys were hoping for. And you guys, you wanted to see standalone stories. You got a standalone story. And just because it had Jack Black in it, being Jack Black, basically, it was, I almost expected him to start singing Grogu, 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 or something in it, in it. Lizzo was great. Christopher Lloyd was awesome. If it was just Christopher Lloyd, I would have loved the whole episode a lot better, because he was a good bad guy in it. And I liked it. But something about it fell flat for me. And the directing was great. Like you said, Bryce Dallas Howard was just amazing. She's turning into a great director, and in some ways better than an actor. So I actually, think that's where she's going to make her name for herself, just like her dad. And I really think we're going to get more Star Wars from her too. And I'm hoping we're going to. Gideon was awesome. Gideon should have, like you said, been, he escapes in the first episode and then he starts plotting throughout the season. That would have made the season a little more interesting. Like you don't even have to see him escape. The rebel or the New Republic finds the ship already broken down, like you find at the end of that one episode. But you don't have it that, he's only in the last 2. there's a pacing issue with this season, and I think that's the problem with it. Do I think it's a bad season? Hell no. I liked the season. I was looking forward to every Wednesday night to be able to watch this. Now I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with my Wednesday nights till Ahsoka comes back, you know.
I know, right? Till August, right?
Yeah, exactly. So literally, you know, I think it was a great season. Was it the best season? No, but that's okay. There were some of the best episodes of the series to me that I think we've gotten. I also think it's some of the weakest, but it just wasn't consistent. That's my problem, because we got consistency through the first 2 seasons.
Yeah. Real quick, you know, I know everybody was like, you know, piling on the quote unquote cameos. They're not cameos. They're actual parts. like they weren't just on for a scene, and it wasn't like a non-speaking role. They like were actually integral to the plot. Like
it wasn't like Jack Black was going and then disappeared. You know,
but it was stunt casting for sure. But I think I was more disappointed in the fact that the Darksaber was handed over without much fanfare at the end of that episode than anything else that happened previously in that episode. So that's what my big beef with that episode is. But rather than dump on that, I want to talk about another episode that I really liked that we haven't really mentioned, and I'll do it real quick because I know we got to, you know, wrap things up pretty soon. But the 4th episode, The Foundling, directed by Carl Weathers, with written by Filoni and Favreau. Not only do we get an amazing adventure with the Mandalorians and the big creatures that live on their little planet that I don't know why they're living there if there's so many creatures that are taking their kids. But in any case, you have a little adventure like that, which is really well played out. And one of my favorite scenes in the whole season was, you know, Bo-Katan's trying to fit in with these Mandalorians that are hardcore. They won't take their helmets off. And she's like, how do we eat? And he's like, oh, we just go on by yourself. And, you know, they're like, except you, because you're leading the mission. And so she's just there by herself, eating by herself. It's just such a it's such a well done scene. It's like she doesn't fit in. She's all alone. Like, I just thought it was really well played out. But we also get big, huge, like, answer as to where Grogu, like, came from, like what his history was as far as being, like, saved during the Clone Wars, during the Purge, or whatever you want to call that, Order 66 and all that, right? And a redemption, really.
You don't know what you talk about.
A redemption for Ahmed Best as well. So I thought everything was wrapped up. I thought that was really an exciting episode. So that was a real big highlight for me. All right, before we get out of here, I got to ask real quick, Ashley, where do you want this series or this part of the universe to go from here?
You know what? In a way, I'm almost ready for maybe it to take a little break. Like, let's go into Ahsoka. Let's dive deep into those characters, see what happens, what Dave Filoni is going to plan for his big event movie. And maybe Mando and Grogu can make appearances in that. And then maybe I would like to see them come back on their own and have kind of a little more of a standalone series. Like, this is the Mandalorian and his apprentice, you know, going out through the galaxy, kind of doing guns for hire for the New Republic. So I would like to maybe separate somewhat of that larger, you know, really big epic storytelling that Star Wars is doing on Disney Plus right now, and then maybe get back to a little bit more of the standalone, kind of like lone gunman feel for the Mandalorian. So I think it's possible to have both those two types of storytelling coexisting.
Yeah. Jay, what about you?
I would say I wholeheartedly agree with that take. I think that there's this thing in Star Wars. There's 2 problems that Star Wars kind of tends to have. One is that everything is based around the Skywalker saga. Like the first trilogy, the second trilogy, the third trilogy, it's all Skywalker all the time. And yet it is this rich world where just about everybody who watches it can find a part of that world that goes, that really interests me. I wish I could see more of that. And so, you know, Ashley said earlier in the show that she really wishes she could see some more Jedi stuff. I'm done with Jedi stuff. I'm good, man. I've had enough Jedi stuff. I don't want any more Jedi stuff. Give me some bounty hunters fighting off some galaxy somewhere else. Like, I've been waiting to see Nar Shaddaa. I've been waiting to see the Old Republic. These are all references that, to me, I was drawn into as a fan. That as soon as we think, I think that we start to get on this trail that might take me there, we get pulled back into the Skywalker saga, and I just don't want to be in the Skywalker saga anymore. I'm good with it. So for me, I think that I'm on the same page as Ashley, that they should, Grogu and Din should go do their own thing. We get to explore more pieces of the galaxy. We get away from the Skywalker saga a little bit more. I would like that a lot. That's what I would like to see.
That's going to be other shows.
Yeah, it is. I know.
I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if any of you are going to get your wish on that, because I think now that they're invested, I think it's all about the rise of the New Order. Like, I think that's going to be a dark cloud that's over everything now. So, but that could be interesting where that goes. And that's not to say that there's not some leeway in there, right? Mike, what about you? What do you want to see next?
I'm with everybody else. I want to see new stuff. I want to see in Ahsoka. I don't want to see Grogu and Din Djarin show up at all. I don't want to see the Mandalorian in Ahsoka. You got that with Book of Boba Fett. I was not, I didn't want to see that. I wanted it to focus completely on Boba Fett, but it would almost felt like I said earlier, it was Mandalorian, 2.5 or whatever you want to call it. But for going forward, I'd like them to take a little break from this and do some other tales. We're supposed to get Skeleton Crew and some other,
I don't even know what that is.
We don't either. That's the great thing about it.
Even I don't know what it is, really. And I eat, sleep, and breathe Star Wars.
And so
I don't know when it takes place, or what it is,
I want
a
to
movie
see,
or show, or
no,
what? I don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. But that's the cool thing about it. I want to see, stuff away, like Jay said, away from the Skywalkers. I don't want to have anything to do with Luke or Darth Vader or Rey or whatever. We're going to get a Rey movie. They just announced it at Celebration. So I know Ashley's like above cloud 9 right now with that. And that's another tale to tell. But folks, what I'd love to see is, there's a whole universe out there. There's so many characters and so many stories they could tell. And there's, what happened to all the clones from the Clone Wars still? We don't know. It's you were dealing with that a little bit in Bad Batch, but
a lot in that.
Yeah, exactly. But I would love to see stories on that. And I would love to see stories that don't take place between Return of the Jedi and, the third trilogy. I want to see some stuff past that. I would love to see that the New Order isn't have a shadow. The Emperor's gone. Spoilers for the last movie. But, it's, I want to see story, I want to see new stories like that, new tales. And because if you go by the extended universe, there's stories in there where forces from outside of their galaxy start invading and such. I want to see stories like that where they have to start dealing with new threats that are even bigger than the Empire or the New Order and everything. And so I definitely would love to see that. So who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly see what's on the table. I don't know if that's going to be applied to the future of the Mandalorian series, but
no,
I certainly think that it could be interesting. I was hearing all these rumors about Series 3 and I was excited and not excited at the same time, because I heard we were going to see Ezra, we were going to see Sabine, we were going to see Hera, we were going to see more Thrawn, we were going to see characters from Rebels pop up, and I was like, wow, is Mandalorian going to lose control of his own show? It's just going to become a Rebel show? And that didn't quite happen the way I thought it was going to. I mean, a person from Rebels did actually take over the show for a while, Bo-Katan, but not in the other way. So, but we are going to get Ahsoka, which is the next quote unquote chapter that Filoni and Favreau are telling in that tale. I think it's definitely along those lines. And as far as that goes, to me, it's all about this guy. Everything is about Thrawn now for me. Like, this is the guy I love. This is the character I've been waiting for. I'm so excited that he's played by the same guy who did the voice in Rebels. I do think that, all things are going to come into play because of Thrawn. So all these things that are going to come together. We might even see Boba Fett again. We might even see what's his name? Cab Vance. But yeah, from that's on
Cab
Tatooine or whatever. Yeah.
Cab Bane. That's it.
No, well, the Timothy Oliphant character.
Yeah.
And
Cobb
Vance. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who knows what we might see, but I am super excited for Ahsoka, more so than I was for this season of The Mandalorian. Yeah. And I'm really anxious to see where that goes. And as far as Mandalorian goes, I do think, depending on what happens, I do think that they've left it open that it's going to be more about, they left Din Djarin. I was really surprised that Din Djarin and Grogu left Mandalore without even any sort of fanfare or ceremony. They just were like, peace, we're done, bye. Because he just about an hour ago said, I'm here to serve you, Bo-Katan. And then, they defeat Gideon. He's like, I'm done, bye. And then he's gone. And he and Grogu are like living on the plain somewhere, just chilling. And I'm like, this is really weird. But it does signal that there's going to be some sort of reset there, I think. So that should be really, and because we now know he has also a mission, which I think it's always been about him having a mission, and he's going to be working, on select missions for is it the Resistance? No, it's not the Resistance. Maybe he's going to be part of the Rise of the New Resistance, because we haven't seen that yet start. But as part of the New Republic, he's going to be doing these missions for him. So he's going to come up against New Order stuff all the time, I'm sure. So he's going to be invested in it, but maybe there will be some more episodic episodes to come as well. We'll see. But it's really exciting. I like the way this season ended. It surprised me in a good way, and I just can't wait till August. I can't wait till August. So we will be back at I think it's 8 weeks. Is it 8 weeks for Ahsoka? I don't know. We don't know, right? 6,
Longer
8,
than
10.
That.
We
it's
don't
a
know.
Year, 12
but
years.
Anyway,
30 years.
After Ahsoka's done, we'll be certainly back to cover that and review that. So thanks, guys, for reviewing this season of The Mandalorian with us. And we will be back after this break.
Okay, YouTube listeners, we are back for your bonus part. As we like to always do, each episode with, we talk about, Mandalorian this episode. Was there any characters in this season, and I'm putting this out to everyone, that was overused compared to underused? Because, people were saying, oh, we didn't see the Mandalorian enough in this, or we, type thing. Did you think anyone was overused, that there was too much of a character? Because we would have liked to see more Gideon. We focused on that and such. Do you think, somebody was overused?
Well, I will say that as far as The Mandalorian as a series goes, I would be really happy if he never goes to Tatooine again.
I would be okay with that also.
Tatooine is overused in Star Wars, period. For a planet that's the farthest away from, quote unquote, the farthest away from anything, the center of the universe, right? The farthest from it. It shows up a lot in Star Wars.
It's very popular.
I don't know if there's been a series, maybe Andor, that hasn't had Tatooine in some way in it. So, I'm not really compelled, other than Cobb Vance. I'm not really compelled by any of the characters that still are there. Maybe Boba Fett, but what's her name? The one
Fennec Shand.
Yeah. I do like those two as well, but I'm certainly not a fan of the lady character there and her droids and working on ships and all that kind of stuff. I don't.
What, you don't like Amy Sedaris and her really bad accent?
I don't.
Oh.
I don't care for that character, and so I will. That's my vote.
Okay, Ashley.
Oh gosh. I think instead of like a character that's overused, I like what the rest have said about spacing out characters, because with like that episode with Dr. Pershing felt kind of weird because it was separated. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was too much of his character because I thought that was all really intriguing. So I think if it had just been like woven into the story a little more, I think would have helped.
It was neat in that episode, and we didn't even bring it up, the decommissioning of the Empire's ships and everything, and how they were in the dry docks there and everything.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. And how, of course, the subway line goes right through it, and as you're on the subway, oh wait, there's a destroyer right there.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
All right, Jay, what about you?
So the question is, which characters would I have liked to see more of?
No, less of.
Less of.
But there, there's plenty of them I want to see more. I want to see more Zeb.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see more Zeb.
True.
That was a huge surprise too.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Zeb was
and he looked good in live action.
Oh, he looked great.
That's what I was worried about.
Yeah.
And everything.
Any characters I want to see less of? Well, I mean, this is going to sound crazy. This is going to sound really crazy. As much as I love Din Djarin, I would have preferred this season just been called Bo-Katan, and I honestly, you could have left Din off the show entirely, and I would have been totally fine with it. Not that I don't like his character and don't want to see more of that character, but in this series, his arc is not all that relevant. Bo-Katan's arc is highly relevant, and she brings all of Mandalore together and has. And goes from, you guys talked about it already, but she goes from sitting on a throne by herself, a ruler of nothing, to the ruler of Mandalore, like a revived Mandalore. That's pretty cool. But Din and even Grogu, there was a moment early on in the season. I actually like this episode a lot too. But it was the episode where Din and Bo went to explore the ruins, and they found the whole General Grievous type character, and they had to fight him off and all that. There was a moment in there where Grogu kind of didn't want to follow Bo-Katan farther into the cave, and Bo-Katan turns back to him and says like, "Hey, you got to get over your fear because we've got to go rescue the guy you care about, and if you don't get over your fear, then it's a problem." And I actually felt like that to me was almost like them signaling that Grogu was going to struggle with a dark side turn. Because we know what fear leads to, right? Like fear, fear has a bad pathway, and so even those little types of things, I felt like they felt incomplete. I do think you guys have both said this. I do think you're right. Filoni tends to do this because he's building this much bigger thing, and so he's going to bring these themes up in other areas. So I'm not worried that they won't address it. But I could have seen less Din and Grogu and been fine with the series, honestly.
Yeah. No, well, it was still called The Mandalorian. It's just which Mandalorian is it? This is the show.
Well, exactly. And that's the impression I was going through. Exactly. Any one of them could be the Mandalorian. And it was interesting with that because, Mikey, what about you?
Oh, I already said Tatooine. I don't want to go back to
You don't want to go back. That's right. No. But it's interesting.
There's sand everywhere.
Yeah.
I was fully expecting in this season for Grogu to become more of a force user and be a little more powerful, especially in the final 2 episodes when he was in that, the robot body and no, yes. And I love that. And I just thought, especially when he was going up against the souped up stormtroopers, the ones in red, I thought he was gonna, I was fully expecting when the doors closed with him in there, and I fully expected the doors to open, them to be all knocked out and everything, and him just walking out, and he uses force power to throw him against the walls or something, not to, crush him or anything. But even Judy said, I could see this be, him being tempted by the dark side or something like that, fighting them because he's, trying to protect his loved ones, him turning to get more power and everything. So,
and especially since Din Djarin doesn't have any experience with like the Force and the dark side, so he's training Grogu in the Mandalorian way, but Grogu also has this Force side, and how much is he going to use it? How is he going to develop it? So I think there could be some really interesting interplay there.
Yeah,
Nope,
absolutely.
Exactly. So it was just some interesting stuff that, just thoughts that I had gone through about the series and everything. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, YouTube people, this is what you get when you give us bonus time. We keep on talking about the show further. It's pretty darn awesome. All right, let's wrap this sucker up. So that's going to end another episode of the Earth Station One podcast. I want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Ashley, thank you as always.
Oh, thank you. It is always a pleasure.
Anything you want to shout out about or promote?
Yes, well, this is a little bit belated, but this is my first appearance on the show since the big Star Wars Celebration announcement. So, of course, I have to give a shout out to the Rey movie. I was just over the moon when my dad mentioned they were doing it. I assumed like it was just like speculation or something like that, but I'm really excited. The character means a lot to me personally and has gotten me through some of the best and worst moments of my life, and just the fact that she gets to come back is really cool. And I hope that this movie is going to be fulfilling for people like me that are already a fan of the character, but also maybe help people that haven't liked that character, that part of the story as much, kind of connect more with it too. So hopefully more good things to come. But I was very excited about that news.
As soon as I heard it, I said, Ashley must be over the moon. It was funny.
Yes, I'm not going to say I got a little emotional, but it's possible that I did, that I needed to take a moment, pause my work, and just kind of let that process. So it very well could be the first movie I get to take my daughter to see in theaters. So if that's the case, then I'm just going to be bringing a box of tissues with me because all the emotions. But yeah, I was very pleased about that news. So hopefully it's good and I won't be crying because it's a terrible movie. So
understandable, my dear. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. We haven't talked in a while on the podcast, and I love talking to you guys. So anytime.
It is great to have you back. And what do you got to promote for or shout out about?
You know what? We are doing a short film this year. The last short film we did was in 2016. We did a Star Wars short film, which you can watch on the channel. My channel is called How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. You can go watch it over there. But we're doing another short film this year that we're going to hopefully use as a proof of concept to raise money for a feature. So if you want to follow that whole journey and all the things that we're doing, I haven't posted any content about it yet on How Stories Work with Jay Sherer, but go follow that YouTube channel and that podcast, and hopefully I'll be able to present a lot of that stuff as we move forward and trying to accomplish that.
That is awesome, sir. Awesome. I can't wait to find out what you come out with. That's going to be awesome.
Cool.
And Mr. Mike, we made it through another one, my friend.
We did, and as always, it's my pleasure.
Anything you want to shout out about, sir?
I do. This Saturday, the first Saturday in May 6th, is Free Comic Day once again. And I will be at a comic shop in Georgia. I will be at a new comic shop, grand opening of a store in Ackworth called Urbnpop Comics. It is owned and run by our good friend Chris Hamer. And they will be giving away, all the free comics, and there will be a few independent creators like myself and Peter Cutler that'll be there with our books to sell, as well as I think Peter and I are working on some freebies that we can give out as well. So I'm excited. I know Chris, and I know he's put a lot of effort and time into this comic shop. I'm really anxious to see what he's done and support him in any way I can. And of course, Free Comic Day it's become for comic lovers, it's become like a holiday. It's just a really fun celebration of comics. I'm glad I'm at a store.
Exactly. And it's only 2 days after May the 4th be with you. So there you go. So it'll be very interesting. Free Comic Book Day is always a great time to get out there. All right, my shout out real quick. Over the weekend, we actually went to another concert. We got to go see our friend Ben Folds, and he got to play with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. and it was amazing. And we've seen Ben tons of times. Ben is great on his own when he was with Ben Folds 5. And then, of course, he goes around and plays in different cities with the different orchestras. And that's what I wanted to promote real quick. If you live in a somewhat decent sized city, most of them have like symphony orchestras, and they're just regular people who gather to play all together and to present the classics. And there's some amazing music out there, folks, and a lot of funding for these organizations is being cut left and right as things get more and more expensive. And you know what? It's all about getting out there to the arts, to younger people, to, children. And, when I was growing up, we had field trips to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and we got to see the National Symphony Orchestra. And it was always amazing to me, and it's always stuck with me. I used to take William when he was little, any chance they had to see the symphony play, because, a lot of the music is that you hear in sci-fi or fantasy is orchestral music, and if you grow an appreciation for it. So it's pretty darn awesome. And there's easy ways to support it by going to concerts, by even becoming a sustaining member. It just depends what you're able to do, but just go to it, folks. It's some amazing material, and it's not all stuffy stuffed shirts where you shake your beads at it and everything, as my friend used to say. It's, people, you can go in your t-shirts, you can go in your baseball caps, or you can wear sneakers to go see the symphony. It's okay. It's there for the people, and it's by regular people doing it. Take advantage of it. So definitely do. As always, thanks for listening to the Earth Station One podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you guys. If you want to support us, please check out our Tee-Public store and get some really cool ESO Network swag, including the new Darren Noel t-shirt. It's awesome. We've been selling quite a few of those, and every t-shirt we sell with the Wonder Warrior on it is going to charity, and it's going to be going to a good cause. Also, remember, if you want to listen to our show before the rest of the world, why not join the ESO Network Patreon? For as little as $1 a month, you could help support us here at Earth Station One. And coming soon, you're going to be able to start programming Earth Station One. That's going to be pretty cool stuff. We're going to definitely do that for our patrons. Check out our ESO Patreon at patreon.com/ESO Network. We also want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at feedback@earthstation1.com. Remember, you can also find Earth Station One wherever fine podcasts are found. And now Earth Station One also can be found in video format up on YouTube. Please check out our show and like and subscribe, and ring that bell at the top. It's awesome. That's how you know when we have a new episode out. Thanks. We do appreciate everyone who has been subscribing, who's been watching us up there. It's been a ton of fun doing this in video. And, we got to pretend that we're not just going the whole time. We're watching, when someone else is talking and everything. On behalf of myself, Mike Faber, Mr. Mike Gordon, Ms. Ashley Paulus, and Mr. Jay Sherer, thank you so much for watching, folks. We do appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time on Earth Station One. Peace. And remember, this is the way. And we're done. Boom.